I've spent the last 10 years pushing the limits while identifying trends and patterns in my type 1 diabetes management. Follow along as I learn, apply, and share the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle strategies that I've learned from diabetes experts around the world. The real question is, how can we live fearlessly with diabetes while maintaining stable blood sugars? This podcast is here to give you the answer. My name is Matt Vandervecht, head coach and co-founder of FTF Warrior, and welcome to Pardon My Pancreas.
What's going on, everybody? We have a super exciting guest today that's going to teach us all about exercise and diabetes and tell us a little bit of her experience with training as a professional athlete. So Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today and joining us.
Thank you.
So Lauren, I actually met you kind of over the internet, right? At the recent panel for Connected Emotion. We were doing exercise and diabetes. What were your thoughts on how that panel went?
I thought it was really good. I really liked it. Rob was a great moderator. It was the first time I had been on a virtual panel, and actually the first time I'd been on a sports and exercise panel. I've been on like a couple travel panels, but never sports and exercise. So,
okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if that was your first one. That's super cool.
Yeah, I think it's just like timing. Like a lot of these conferences, there are a lot of similar talks and panels at the same time. So sometimes I'm already speaking at something when they have the sports and exercise one. And so it just never worked out. So I was really excited.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that was my first exercise and diabetes virtual panel as well. I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. And just showed up and there's my pump making its classic low sound. So that's cool. But that was my first one as well. Rob did a great job. I got to meet you and some other fantastic athletes in the type 1 diabetes space. And it's so cool to see how organizations are adapting so well, where it's like, let's just do it virtual. We'll do it live, and everyone's just like, all right.
Yeah.
But before we jump into like everything exercise and diabetes in your life, I would love to know a little bit about you and kind of your diagnosis story and how that's been for you.
Okay, cool. So my diagnosis story is a little different. So I do like to share a lot. I was diagnosed at a well visit at my doctor's office. So I went in for an annual physical and I peed in a cup, and they called back later and said that I had diabetes and needed to go in for inpatient or outpatient education. So I wasn't hospitalized. I wasn't in DKA or anything. So we caught it really early, which was lucky. So yeah, a little different. I know a lot of people like they're going to the emergency room or they're showing up at their pediatrician's office like super sick, but no, not me.
That's amazing. I mean, it sucks to be diagnosed, of course, but I'm so glad you caught it early.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of like a slow entrance. Like at first I wasn't on insulin like immediately. It like took a few weeks, and there was like they gave me long acting, but I wasn't taking it. I wasn't taking a ton of it, and I wasn't taking short acting with meals right away. And then like it wasn't too long. Like I've heard stories of people who it was months before they had to go on like insulin all the time, but mine was just a couple weeks. But it was a little bit of a slower entrance into diabetes, I guess.
Huh. And how old did you say you were?
I was pretty young. We actually we don't have the exact year of diagnosis. It's like a little argument in the family. But yeah, I was really young. So like my parents were definitely the ones trying to figure it out.
Okay. What would you say like roughly was your age? Like below 10?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I don't actually like remember it super well.
Huh.
Yeah. What I think I remember a lot of like with a lot of memories, I guess, but like what I think I remember, it turns out it's just like what I've been told essentially. So like I had like a pretty clear picture in my head, and then I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, no, that wasn't the office that we were at. And I was like, she was like, that's their new office. And I was like, oh, okay. Then like, I don't remember.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So what was it like growing up with that? Because I was diagnosed later in life. So I love hearing perspectives of just that's your norm,
Yeah. I mean, there's always that like the age old debate, like, is it better to be diagnosed like young or older? And I feel like everybody thinks that like when they were diagnosed is like the best, I guess, which is better than everyone thinking it's the worst. But
very true.
Yeah. No, I never had a doctor tell me or like anyone tell me that there was something I couldn't do. So like questions I get sometimes are like, were you worried about being a professional athlete with diabetes? And like that never even crossed my mind, which I guess is a bit of a blessing. Like it didn't even like occur to me that that would be something that would hinder me. So it wasn't until college that I like really entered the diabetes space and started talking to other people with type 1. It wasn't until like really late in college. And then that's when I started getting those questions. And that's when it occurred to me like, oh, I guess I could have considered that. But yeah, it didn't really affect me that much. And then I guess the other piece is my parents, like me and my parents at first, I think still today, they don't realize how serious like diabetes can be because I wasn't diagnosed in like a super sick state. So they still have pretty big disconnect. Like they are not active in my diabetes management, which is completely fine with me. Like I have plenty of other people that I can bounce things off of and plenty of other people following me on Dexcom Share, but not my parents.
Oh, interesting. So they're not even connected to your share.
No. And to be honest, I don't think they know like what an in-range blood sugar number would be. Like if I said like my blood sugar is 350, they would be like,
good job.
Like, what's the perspective? Like, where are we supposed to be? Like, because I went to boarding school. So I haven't lived at home in 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
So they haven't had not even just diabetes wise, but just like in general, they haven't had a lot of like input in terms of like day-to-day functioning, I feel like.
So were you kind of forced to take it on by yourself, or did you have an external support with like your medical team or friends even?
I think I had external support with like my medical team and friends. I don't remember it being like a traumatic experience at all.
Okay.
I think I'm really lucky. And I've heard other people say this too. Like, I think my brain works fairly well for diabetes. Like there are some people that have a harder time figuring out the math or just thinking through things like in a step-by-step, like logical way. So like when something goes wrong with diabetes, I'm pretty good at figuring out like maybe what was going wrong. I'm also a fairly methodical and routine driven person, which definitely helps. So I eat the same foods all the time.
That's super helpful.
I'm very
consistency leads to consistency.
Yeah.
I love that you weren't discouraged or even told that diabetes could potentially make it more difficult to become a professional athlete. Like when I was diagnosed, it was like, your life's different. It's going to suck. Like my doctor was not great. And once I finally did learn that you can still be a professional athlete, like I went to college and I was a collegiate athlete, never got to where you're at, which is super cool. But now it's like part of my presentations when I speak on stage, I'm like, you guys, you can be an Olympic athlete. There are Olympic athletes currently. Like, don't let this slow you down, you know? And I love that you're living that life. And that you're
no one ever, like, it never occurred to me. And I'm really lucky now. When I first moved to Utah and got a new endocrinologist, he was great, but he has type 1, which I thought at first was like, oh, this is great. But it turns out that didn't work out as well as I would have thought. I don't know if he's had a bad experience like in his personal life or like what it was, but he was very fearful of low blood sugars for me.
That's got to be a personal experience.
Exactly, which you would think like someone with type 1 it would work, but there are people with type 1 that are really fearful of lows, and if you're a physician that's really fearful of low blood sugars, then it translates. Because to kind of put in perspective, like I was coming in with a really low A1C, but coming in with Dexcom data that could show that it wasn't from a lot of severe lows. And so he was saying, I want your A1C to come up. Mm-hmm. And I was saying, look at my data.
I got
data show that like I'm doing fine. Like it's less than 1% urgent low. Like we're doing okay. And so I wasn't going to switch, but my insurance changed. And so I had to switch. And it was such a blessing because now I found a physician that not only is he helpful when I need him to be helpful, but our first visit was great. I came in, he went over everything, and he just said, like, my job is to support you, and it looks like you're doing really well. So if there's something different I can do to help support you, let me know. But my job is to be here for what you need. And so what do you need? And I said, well, honestly, I need to not be coming in every 3 months.
Huh.
And he was like, I will write prescriptions for a year, but I would really prefer to see you every 6. And I was like, wow. I can do every 6. Like I can do that. But 3 months was challenging because I was on the road all winter.
Right.
And so I'd had problems before where doctors weren't going to write scripts if I missed that 3-month appointment, and I couldn't have that happen either.
Definitely. Okay, well, I'm actually curious now. So you love routines, you eat consistent meals. What does that look like when you're on the road?
So like, just because they're consistent doesn't mean that they're what you would think of as like a perfect meal. For the record, like I have a major sweet tooth, but I'm lucky that I stick to the same sweets a lot. So I now know how to bolus for them. But like I eat a lot of carbs on most days, to be clear. Like I'm over 200 grams of carbs on most days, which for a lot of people is not not sustainable. But I like carbs, like pasta, bread, bagels, like those are my staples.
Oh yeah, I'm even higher than 200.
Oh, a lot of times it's more. I've had 2 bagels today, and like
Nice. What do you put on your bagels?
cream cheese, sometimes butter.
Nice.
I'm from New York, so like bagels are really, ingrained in me.
You ever do capers and salmon and the whole shebang?
So I've done like lox. I don't really like capers. Yeah. So that's the other piece, I guess. I don't like vegetables. Like point blank. Like
I remember that on the panel. You're like, I have to trick myself.
Yeah, I put them in smoothies. Like otherwise I won't eat them. I mean, like I love cilantro, but I've been told repeatedly it is actually not a vegetable, but it's green, and I vote vegetable on the cilantro.
Yeah.
But so for me on the road, it just means I'm sticking to a lot of the same meals. Luckily, so when I travel with my team, we eat dinner as a team.
I'm going to turn this alarm off really quick.
Did you have juice or something?
I'm perfect.
Oh, you're like 70.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like right there, so it's alarming, but it's perfectly flat, so it's chill.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, so our team cooks dinner together, but luckily it's like pretty much the same 5 meals, just like rotated, because we're athletes, and so like we're cooking the same meals over and over. And then in Europe, I'm really heavy on the schnitzel.
Okay. Is that tough to bolus? You can
find schnitzel like everywhere. So.
Is that tough to bolus for?
No, not anymore. It used to be, but not anymore. It's like, I mean, I like to put, so in Bavaria, like in that area of Germany and some places in Austria, they put like, it's like a cranberry sauce, but it's like Preiselberries or something. They're not cranberries, but they're like the Austrian version of cranberries. And I love putting that on there. So that does change it a little, because it's like pure cranberry sauce that you're like putting on your food.
Right. No, it's super good. I had that when we were out there as well. And I understand.
Well, and like when we train, normally we spend a lot of time in November training in Austria, and I get lunch at the mountain every day. And the guy knows me now. Like I start walking up to order and I don't even have to say anything. He's like, schnitzel? And I'm like, yeah. Because the first thing I learned how to say, and the only thing I really know how to say in German is ein Schnitzel bitte mit Pommes, which is like with fries.
Oh, that's too funny. I was going to ask if you knew any German, but that's all you need to know. Is how to
that's like it. And it's like ein gross Bier bitte. It's like 1 large beer, please. That's pretty much all we call it. Yeah.
What part of Germany do you guys go to?
We're actually mostly in Austria, but they speak German there as well. But that's more for if you're doing World Cup and Europa Cup. And so a couple years ago, I did a full season in Europe, and it wasn't actually that productive for me, because when you ski for the U.S. for ski cross, we are not part of the U.S. ski team. We're all individual athletes. So we're responsible for finding our own coaches and support staff. And so for me, that means that I need to join another ski club. Because I can't afford, a coach, a physio, or a tech all on my own. And so that splits the cost. And being in Europe, that was really challenging. So I now split my season between North America and Europe normally. This year we didn't get to Europe because it was supposed to be like March and April.
Oh.
And then we didn't get March and April.
Phase. I know, that sucks.
Yeah.
How have you been doing with that, with the huge shift?
So far it's actually been fine. So I was in Calgary when it happened, in Alberta, Canada. And so we trained, forget what our last day was, but we had just come back from a race block, and we were training, and then they said that the mountain was closed. Like we had 3 days off, and during those 3 days the mountain closed. So we didn't know. I kind of knew it was going to blow up. We had a team meeting and people weren't sure. They were like, it's not so bad here in Canada. Plus, it won't hit the US as hard as it won't hit Canada as hard as it hits the US because we're more spread out and we have socialized healthcare and blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting there kind of like, So we sat there and I waited. So then the borders closed and my father made me call Customs and Border Patrol to confirm that I would still be able to cross the border after they closed because I'm an American citizen.
Right.
Which I knew was true and I was correct. So I waited because they didn't officially cancel. So normally in April and May, we would be training up at Sunshine, which is in Banff.
Oh, nice.
And they waited to cancel that camp for a little while. And I was afraid I would leave, come home to Park City, and then they would say, oh, we're still having the camp. And I wouldn't be able to get back into Canada.
Okay.
So I waited until they officially canceled that, which was like March 28th. And then I drove back on March 30th.
Okay. So I'm curious, actually, you mentioned with not being part of the U.S. national team, right, that you have to find your own coaches.
Yeah.
I remember on the panel, it was like, I tried not to laugh because they asked what you tell your coaches and you were like, well, I have a coach for this and a coach for that and a coach for that. Like, how many coaches do you have and how did that relationship go with telling them about type 1?
So I have my primary coach is my ski coach. He's our head coach. And Adam luckily has a background as like an EMT.
Oh, cool.
So he was actually fairly like well-versed in diabetes. And so he was really easy. He's also known me for a really long time. So this was my first year with that club. I'd been skiing independently and was paying day rates with different programs at events. And it wasn't working out super well. So that's when I decided to fully join a club. And he had already known me for probably 5 or 6 years. So at races and seen me before. And he had like a pretty good working knowledge with type 1. The only problem was he is Canadian. So he's used to the millimoles per deciliter.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not great with numbers. So it was a little bit of a struggle. And the other piece was we couldn't originally get my Dexcom, like he couldn't get the Follow app to follow me because he was getting his from the Canadian app store and mine's from the US app store. So what we had to do was I had to log into iTunes to like put my Apple ID into his phone.
Yeah.
Because I have a US Apple ID and then download Follow and then log out and he logged back in. The only snafu is I currently have all of his cell phone contacts now on my phone from this event. I'm not really sure what happened. So, but he's still able to follow my Dexcom, no problem.
Okay. So he's like, look, just don't text my mom and we'll be cool.
Well, it's so funny because I actually, like when it first happened, I was up there and I accidentally called his mom because I just told mom. And so now my mom is in there as mother.
Oh, that's so funny.
Mom. I mean, I could just change it, but there's a lot of contacts, you know, and a lot of them are just first names too.
Oh, right.
And so I'm just like, do I actually need to keep this? Like, I don't know if this was mine originally. Normally mine have first, last names. So I just left them. They're all on there.
That's
but
true.
Yeah. And then my strength and conditioning coach is local to me here. And so we had a little bit of the conversation, but to be honest, I didn't go super in depth with him. Just kind of like, if I have to cancel because if my blood sugar is super high, I might not want to come lift and it might not be productive for me. So, and then also just, can you let me know ahead of time if we're doing something super cardio based? But frankly, he doesn't do anything cardio based with me anyways, because I have my triathlon coach handles the cardio side of things. So Deacon, who's my strength and conditioning coach, he didn't need to know a lot. He knows enough, but he didn't need to know a ton because he's not with me. Like my ski coach is with me 24/7. I lived in his house this year. So he's with me 24/7 and he's with us overnights.
Okay.
So, and then my triathlon coach is Cliff Sherb, who actually has type 1 and he coaches a lot of people with type 1 for triathlon. So he knows the deal. He's pretty.
Gotcha. So we're at 3 coaches. Is that all of them?
For coaches, yeah. I have a nutritionist, but yeah.
Okay.
And I have a sports psych as well that I've had for years.
That's just the and. You're a popular lady. Well, that's
Yeah.
super cool though, because you have all your bases covered.
Yeah.
But do you trust all of them? Like when you go, you're like, I know you're gonna give me the right answer, or do you always check their sources and kind of look it up on your own as well?
For the most part, I trust them when it comes to like nutrition wise. There's a difference between like trust and actual implementation.
Right.
So like I do my best to stay on my macros, but just because I didn't follow them doesn't mean that it wasn't because I didn't trust you. It
Mhm.
maybe it also, like Cliff calls it, going off the reservation. So like sometimes I go off the reservation, which is when like if a schedule changes or a plan changes, for example, I might go off the reservation and go for a long bike ride because I was riding and it felt really great and I felt like I was really being productive. So I, instead of going for 2 hours, I went for 4 hours.
Mm.
I would then have to go off the reservation with the nutrition plan as well, because if I don't follow the exercise plan, then I have to not follow the nutrition plan or it's not going to match.
Yeah. Or
So,
if you want candy one day, right?
or like every day, like every day. Like there's so much sweet. There are so many sweets in my house. It's like, you'll never have a problem treating a low at my
I was
house.
gonna say you got a good low stash, so it's totally fine.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just extra prepared, is all it really is.
I mean, the other day I did make cookie dough. Like I made a quarter batch of cookie dough because I was craving cookie dough, not cookies, but cookie dough.
Yeah.
And so a quarter batch was half an egg. So I had to I mixed up half an egg and then,
Oh wow, that's detailed.
well, because the thing is, it only stays for three-ish days in the fridge.
Oh, gotcha.
So I didn't want to make a whole batch and then have it go to waste in the fridge.
That makes sense. Or have to eat them. They're gonna
Right.
go bad, so I might as well bolus.
Exactly.
Okay. With your conditioning, do you have a favorite exercise?
Yeah. I like hang cleans a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Just the feeling of it, or do you feel strong doing it?
It makes me feel really strong. Also, like recently at least, as my form has improved, the gains have been so easy to see because to be honest, it wasn't like the strength or the power that was limiting my hang cleans. It was my form. And so as soon as you fix the form, like I've had a 20-pound, like obviously in increments, but 20 pounds of PRs since I got home on March 30th, which isn't strength based, right? It's like, it's definitely a lot of technique based,
Yeah.
but it's much more fun when you're like seeing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the charts are climbing. You're like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like my squat has been the same for like, it's like every month it goes up by like a couple pounds for like the past, 5 years, 6 years. So it's not the same.
But it's still going up.
Oh yeah, it's still going up. But yeah, no, the hang cleans for sure. Those have been my favorite recently.
Okay. From a diabetes side of things, what's your current tech setup?
So I am on the T-Slim X2 with Control IQ. I should make a little disclaimer that I speak for Tandem on their speaker series. So the pump was provided free of charge. That being said, I've been on it. I've been on the T-Slim since long before I spoke for Tandem, and they do not force me to say nice things about their product. I just genuinely love it. So I'm also on Dexcom G6.
Oh, cool. That just came out this year. So what have your thoughts been while training, especially at such a high level? Does it have a massive impact?
Yeah. So I'm the kind of person that I am really aggressive with my diabetes control in general. So my A1C has not gone up or down, but the level of input that I've had to make has gone down drastically, which is a welcome improvement because I'm the kind of person that's constantly, like microbolusing or doing a small increase in basal or decrease, like a lot, like multiple times an hour, I'm touching the pump to make adjustments normally.
Oh.
And so now I've been able to sort of like let it run.
Yeah.
It's really nice. So I'm definitely an early adopter when it comes to technology. So when it first came out, I got it really early because I'm on the speaker series. And so I was actually at a World Cup in Alberta and it came out right before our training run.
Oh.
And I downloaded it, like literally we were in the hotel room. I was like putting on ski stuff, getting ready to go to the hill, and they're like, we have to go. And I'm like, it's almost done. It's almost done. And I know a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But in my head, I was kind of like, if I hate this, I can always just go back to not having, like, you can turn off Control IQ, and it's just like a regular pump, which I've had for years.
Did you have basal IQ beforehand?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have Control IQ as well with the Tandem and Dexcom setup. And I do, like you said, hands off. That's incredible. It makes decisions for you and it minimizes all that input. But I sometimes miss the ability to set temp basals. And so I'm like, all right, I have to turn Control IQ off and then do the temp basals myself.
I will say, like, the activity profile is not, like, the exercise activity is not exactly how maybe I would have designed it. But I think, like, in general, it's important for me to remember that not everybody is like me. So, like, it works for a lot of people. And the other piece is, if the Dexcom is not reading accurately, then Control IQ. So, like, the other day I went rock climbing and I must have, like, hit the sensor pretty hard. I don't know, but it started reading LOW and I knew I wasn't low. And so I have to, like, text everyone. I'm like, share thing being like,
yeah,
I'm not low. Cause they're all like, whoa, like, LOW, this is really bad. Cause I took it off when I was actually climbing. And so it was in my bag. And so it went from not having any data to being LOW.
Oh.
So it wasn't even like you saw the, like, where, like, there's no way that's real. That's a compression level.
Right.
And I was about an hour away from home. So I had to wait till I got home, took it off, and, like, it was, like, bent. It was definitely, like, it wasn't working. But my blood sugar was high later because Control IQ had shut it off. And what I should have done was, like, I should have just turned off Control IQ and just gone back to my normal basal settings for the time being. But that's the first time that's happened to me. So it didn't occur to me to do that. Next time I will make sure that that's what I do. But
I ran into the same issue where I had some kind of a messed up Dexcom sensor. It went low and then it was just, like, cutting basal for 45 minutes. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. And yeah, same thing, went a little bit high. Such a bummer too, because Tandem has this incredible technology, but then the other piece can mess up. You're like, dang it.
Well, exactly. It's like, I haven't had a lot recently, but with the signal loss, I know, like, I'm pretty good about it because I keep it on the same side of my body. And because I wear my Dexcom on my stomach, it's not a problem. But I know for people that wear it on their arms, sometimes they lose connectivity with the pump and then it kicks you out of Control IQ. The nice piece is, as soon as you get connected again, you're back in Control IQ. With some other hybrid closed loop systems, it's not that easy to go in and out.
Right. So I guess you mean.
Yeah, I can't do it. I sleep like this.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I wake up like that sometimes, but it's because my arm fell asleep. Like, I can't handle it.
No, I sleep all night like this pretty much.
What?
Yeah, either like that or just like this, because I actually have, like, it's like a swaddle for adults essentially, and it keeps you, like, wrapped up.
Okay.
But either way, I'm, like, lying on the sensor all night, and then it doesn't work or it loses connection or whatever. So yeah,
I definitely have to avoid sleeping on the side of my Dexcom, like which arm it's on. So I get that.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious how you prep for competitions or even for, like, a practice day that you're going all out. Is there a dietary change? Do you keep it? You're a routine gal, so I assume it's all the same for everything.
Yeah, the diet's the same. It's normally, the only thing is we're normally waking up really early. So, like, right now during the summer, I have, like, a pretty big breakfast, and right now I'm doing intermittent fasting just because I'm not waking up late, but I'm waking up at, like, 7:30. And so then I, like, come up, have, like, tea, and then don't start eating breakfast until 11 normally.
Okay.
Like, I get some work done. Sometimes I get a little bit of a lift in and then I eat breakfast. And so that breakfast tends to be much larger than I would have on a training day on snow, because we're out of the house normally at, like, 6 o'clock or so, maybe. So if we're out of the house at 6, I'm waking up at 5, and there's, like, my breakfast recently have been, like, really elaborate. It's been, like, chicken apple sausage, 2 eggs, 2 hash browns, and an avocado. Like they've been like big and like aggressive breakfasts that I would not have time to make before going skiing.
Yeah.
So our normal training day schedule, it depends on where we are, but I'll just use like preseason, for example, because we do that the most probably. Like December is like a big block. So we leave the house at 6, but we're about an hour and a half from the venue. So if I'm eating, I normally eat breakfast in the van on the way to the venue, because then when we get there at 7:30, we're not actually like on snow till 8:30 because I have my warm up in the lodge. So I guess I can just walk through the whole day. So like wake up, go downstairs, start the hot water for the tea, and then come upstairs, get dressed, come back down and make the Eggo waffles.
Nice.
The added protein ones for the record. And
okay, there you go.
we did find that adding butter helped actually, because it was a little more fat to sort of like slow the peak. And then throw all the skis and stuff in the car, come back in, grab the food, get in the car. By that time, we're leaving at 6. And then I eat it from like 6 to 6:15 on the way to the hill. Get there at 7:30 and go through dynamic warm-up. And when we arrive at the hill, that's when I put on my exercise activity profile or temp basal, depending on what the weather kind of looks like and what we're hearing. Because with ski cross, there's the potential that if it's too windy or if it's snowing or if it snowed the night before, we might not be able to go full track because there might be too much snow on the track. And in which case we would just pull starts, which means that we would run the start and then hike back up.
Oh, geez.
Which like completely changes.
Yeah.
It turns into a very cardio activity for me, whereas with a full run, it's not an aerobic activity at all for me.
Okay.
So that, and then also I look at the temperature because I drop when it's cold, and sometimes it's unavoidable. Like if it's too cold, I can have as many granola bars as I want. Like I will have a granola bar or like 30 grams of carbs on every chairlift ride when it's cold, and I will still drop when I come inside.
Holy cow.
So, and it gets very cold in Canada, for the record. Like it was like minus 30 one day Celsius, which is actually very close to minus 30 Fahrenheit.
That is nuts.
Very close to the matching point there.
Yeah.
But so we'll do the dynamic warm up and then we'll go out and train. And again, it depends on whether we're hiking starts or what's going on. But the challenging thing is sometimes, especially if it's training day before a race, that plan can change really fast, because if someone gets hurt on course, they shut down the course, but sometimes we can still run starts and you only get 2 hours of training for the race, or an hour sometimes depending. So you want to utilize all the time you have. So you just end up running starts over and over.
Okay. Do you have, I assume the range for blood sugars widens for competition days where you're like, okay, if I hit 250, it's not the worst thing in the world, versus
it shifts upwards. So normally I like to be like, if I'm in a controlled environment, I'd say I'd like to be between 70 and like 115, 110.
Okay.
And then in an uncontrolled environment like that, I would aim for more like 110 to 160, maybe.
That's still pretty tight.
Yeah, I don't like to be above 160 for a couple reasons. We tend to have training days back to back and also races back to back. And I find that if I go much above 160, it makes it really hard for my body to recover for the next day.
Yeah.
And so if we're racing back to back, I can't sacrifice day 2 for day 1.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where that comes from a little bit. And like, I have some tools to help me like figure out recovery and what impacts it. And one of the biggest impacts has been not necessarily even blood sugar, except above 160 does become a problem, but like I'll be more recovered tomorrow if today my variability was low, even if my blood sugar was 140 all day.
Interesting.
So like if I'm bouncing between 70 and 130 all day, which like you would think it would give you like a lower A1C or a lower average blood sugar, right, the recovery for the next day is significantly lower than if I just like was 140 all day.
That's very interesting. I know that variability, with the massive spikes and drops that we see has a significant impact on energy levels for anyone. But even from 70 to 130, I'm honestly a little bit surprised to hear that.
But if you think about like if a person without type 1 or even you before you had type 1, if you were to go and eat like a ton of candy at the movie theater and then like sit there and then like leave, your body, maybe not when you're a kid, but when you're an adult, you can feel that your body, like it doesn't like that. You feel tired and sluggish later on. And so like, I think that that's part of it. I'm sure that if a person without type 1 was eating that way, you would see lower recovery as well.
Yeah, makes sense. I have a question for you, and I'm pretty sure I know part of the answer, but I'm still going to ask it. So you're a professional athlete, you travel around, you compete all around the world. What comes to mind when I say the word Olympics?
So the Olympics for me, I would really like to go. That's really important to me. But COVID has unfortunately kind of made it a bit more challenging for a couple reasons. I was looking to switch my representation from the US to Israel, and COVID complicated that process because I wasn't able to get some of the documents I needed to switch because government agencies were closed down due to COVID. And so that didn't happen when I wanted it to. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but without getting into too many details because it's very confusing and boring. But pretty much it means that if I switch to Israel this year, I can't compete World Cup until after January. And if it means if I don't switch to Israel this year, that I can't compete at World Champs in February, which are at the Olympic venue and also a qualifying event. All of the December World Cups are also qualifying events. So it's a very hard choice that I might not even get to make because it might not be my choice to make. I might not be able to switch still. But the other piece of it is that the Olympics, even then, it's not a guarantee to go to the games. You still have to qualify. And the Olympics are also in China in 2022, which with COVID also complicates things. The other piece that COVID kind of screwed up was my plan was to race World Cup in December, but that plan included getting a full month in April and a full month in May of training, as well as a full month in August in the Southern Hemisphere, and 2 weeks in October and a full month in November. So we're looking at like 5 months of training that may not happen. And so even with just not being able to go to South America and not getting the spring training, I don't think that I'm ready to race World Cup. It's not like if you were to play World Cup soccer and just not be very good at soccer, like nothing would really happen to you except that you would just look like an idiot. If I go to World Cup for ski cross without being prepared, it's really dangerous. Because the jumps are much bigger.
Gotcha.
And so I don't know that the Olympics are going to happen for me. I'm hopeful that they get postponed a year, but I don't know that they will. It's also complicated sponsors a lot. Oh. Because a lot of sponsors were locked into contracts through the 2020 games with summer athletes. And then normally they finish with the summer athletes, and then we get 2 years, the year before the games and the year of the games with those sponsors. But they are now locked in through 2021 with the summer athletes.
Gotcha.
So
you mentioned the jumps are bigger and makes it a little more dangerous. So does that mean that training for you would have to adjust to the Olympics? Like, would you have to up your training a ton, or is it relatively similar to what you're doing now?
It's similar to what I'm doing now, but in different venues. So most of my training last year happened in North America, and we would be able to do some in North America in the spring because it's a custom built course by Canada Ski Cross, and the club that I ski with is a Canadian club. But those courses in the fall are geared towards World Cup athletes, so they're geared to prepare them for World Cup, whereas what we were doing in the fall, which I needed then, was geared towards North American Cup and European Cup races.
Okay.
So just a little smaller. It's for developing athletes rather than athletes that are already at the World Cup level.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's a hard jump to make. A lot of people, including myself, have struggled to make that jump.
The jump to the higher level of competing?
Yeah, because the courses are much larger and more intimidating. And especially on the female side, we're going quite a bit slower than the men, just by nature of the difference in physiology. Yeah. And so there's a definite consequence to not going fast enough. Because if you don't go fast enough, you don't get to the landing of the jump.
Gotcha. That is scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the same regard, if you're going too fast, you also miss the landing of the jump.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of science involved with the
Yeah,
trajectory.
I don't build courses, but like when they build them, there's definitely a lot of physics and geometry going on.
Oh yeah. Now, does that run through your head, or is you just like feel it? Like this is the right speed for good?
Oh, I don't know. You don't know at first. So the first time you go down a course, they normally they'll have course testers at the World Cup level who will give a little bit of feedback, and they may adjust some features. But like at the NORAM level, some of the more experienced guys will go first and come back on the radio and be like, you're going to want to pop the last jump, or like full press on that last jump. And you kind of know. And then normally the first run, you make a bunch of mistakes. And the key is and this is one thing that I struggle with that I'm working on, is being able to adapt quickly. So realistically, you should be able to ski it one time and then know what you need to do and nail it the second time. For me, it still takes 4 or 5 times before I'm able to do it. And some of that's fear and some of it is ability.
That's understandable. To be able to just go once and be like, yep, I know every single piece of the puzzle.
Well, and for me, if I come up short on a feature, I know theoretically I just need to go faster. But when you come up short, it's painful. It hurts.
Mm.
And so the next time, my brain still wants to jam on the brakes because you don't want it to hurt again.
Right.
And I know that going slower will not solve the problem.
Right.
But in that moment, it's like, don't stop. Oh, don't slow down.
It's reactionary. Yeah, you're like, this one hurt. I'm not going to go more aggressive.
I'm going to back off. And then it makes it way worse. And then the annoying thing is it normally happens by like, you have your one training day and then you have your 2 races normally, is the way our pattern goes for the North American Cup. So then like the second race day, somewhere in the middle of the day, you'll finally hit it with enough speed and be like, oh, why didn't I do that the whole time? That was so much better. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That sounds a little bit scary though. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it can be.
Okay. So looking forward then, what is something that you're looking forward to in the next year, let's say?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting back on snow, and being back with my friends. So most of my friends that I race with, I don't see a lot of the time. It's actually been a little easier this year than other years because normally I am home right now. But because everybody's become so accustomed to online interactions because they also can't see each other, I'm FaceTiming with my teammates and friends a lot more than normal. Normally I want to FaceTime them because I live alone, but they live with families or like their family or their other friends. They have roommates. And so they're not so quick to want to FaceTime with me all the time. But like right now they're all also home with their families, a lot of them, but like kind of lonely because like they've been trapped in their house with their families for a couple months now. And so there's a lot more online interaction, which is really nice for me because normally I feel fairly isolated.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. They're like, all right, I'm kind of sick of my family. What's Lauren up to?
Exactly. And so then like we'll FaceTime, but like it's been better this year, to be honest, because people are looking more for like normally they're working out in the gym together every day. And I'm down here on my own.
Okay.
So they see each other every day normally. So they don't feel the need to find social interaction online.
Huh. Well,
so it's been a little better.
That's a good thing, yeah. I mean, this has been an incredible interview so far. I'm super excited about what's ahead for you, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we have the Olympics set up for you someday.
I hope so.
But before we end the episode, I love to end these with a single question to you, and that is, if you had a golden nugget or a piece of advice you would like to share with our type 1 diabetic audience, what would that be?
So it's really challenging, but if you can remove the emotional connection from your diabetes, it becomes a lot easier to manage. So what I mean by that is when you see a blood sugar that wasn't what you're expecting, a lot of times there's like a little bit of like heartache that comes with that because you're upset that happened, but it really is just a number. And so if you can kind of like separate yourself emotionally from your diabetes, it becomes a lot easier because your diabetes management is not a reflection of you as a person.
Ooh, very well said. I
Yeah.
love that. It's a data point, right?
It's totally, it's a data point, and it's what you do with that information. That it's with like everything else. Like all we're doing in life is collecting information and then making decisions based on that information. And so it's the same with diabetes. And it's not like, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't even necessarily mean that you've like done something wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
There are external variables sometimes that you had nothing to do with.
well, and my favorite salad dressing, the carb count is wrong on it from Trader Joe's.
What? How dare they?
Yeah, they messed it up. And, you know, at first I was like, oh my gosh, but I measured it with the, like I used the tablespoon thing, like I measured it and I don't understand. Let's be clear though, it's not, I don't use the salad dressing to put on salad. I use it for cucumber slices because I don't eat salad. So
That's true. You wouldn't eat salad, would you? Okay. And yeah, when you're measuring it out too, that's frustrating. I'm pretty sure actually that the FDA allows for the nutritional labels to be like 20% off or something.
Yeah, they do. And so I measure most things, especially if I haven't had it before.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I said a tablespoon, you really shouldn't measure it with the tablespoon. You should do it by weight. It's like way more accurate to do it by weight.
Is super accurate.
So I have a scale that lives on the counter, and then I also have a scale that I bring with me. And sometimes I don't need to use it because I've had the food before. But
Right.
if it's something I'm just really unsure about, because like what's a medium-sized apple? Like that's not.
Right. Like this looks medium to me, and someone else is like, "Your hand is huge, though. This is a massive apple." And it's like,
Yeah,
well, who knows?
Yeah, like I have apples right here. That's why I said apple. But like,
Oh yeah,
would you call this medium, small, or large? Like I don't know.
right. It's a tricky game we play with our
Yeah.
blood sugars every single day. But that's great advice. Everything's a data point, and do your best, right, to learn from whatever you collect as data. But
Well, and it might seem like maybe it wouldn't be helpful to hear this, but for me it is. If in terms of diabetes complications, which I think is a lot of people's big fear, right? It actually, like, the best thing we can do is try to keep our blood sugar in range and have low glycemic variability, but that doesn't mean that you're immune from complications, and vice versa. There are plenty of people that have had a hard time with their diabetes management and have not kept their diabetes as well controlled as others, and they don't have complications. In that same regard, there are people that have, you know, done everything by the book, have not had an A1C above 6 and blah, 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 and they end up with complications. So much of that is dependent on your body chemistry and your genetics. And so I find that kind of comforting to know that, like, well, I can do I'll do the best that I can, but there's stuff that's out of your control. And like, it's actually better to me when it's out of my control.
Always. I mean, think about type 1 in itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, what did I do to get type 1? Nothing.
Exactly.
Just happened.
Well, and that's honestly, like, with the Olympics, that's kind of like how I felt when I got the email that said I wasn't going to be able to switch to Israel right now, which you know, impacts my Olympic dreams. It was actually easier because it was like, I've done everything I can do, and I'm going to keep doing everything I can do. And then whatever happens, like, will happen, and we'll live with it.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic quote from a book by Viktor Frankl. It says, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And the whole book is about you choose how you react to whatever life throws at you. You know.
Well, and that's like so I was reading a book called Mind Gym, which if people are into like the mental aspect, it was recommended by my sports psych, but the mental aspect of sport, but also life in general. It explains that fear, adrenaline, nervousness, all those feelings are part of your fight or flight response. And you can look at it like the fear or the nerves that you're having are there to help you perform better, because that's why it's there, right? It's there to save you in case, like, if you were running from a lion or whatever, you know, but like, it's there to help you perform better. And you can either allow it to have you perform better, or it can cripple you. So
interesting.
There's a lot in that book about that kind of idea where, like, you know, these hormones are there for a reason. And as long as you look at them that way, just like there was a study, I forget where it was, but I heard about it on NPR, that showed it's not the amount of stress that affects. So there was originally a study that said a lot of stress would cause health problems and cause people to live shorter lifespans. But it turns out it's not the amount of stress, but it's how you perceive that stress. So if you perceive that stress as something that's going to help you succeed, like you're stressed about this paper because it's going to help you to do better on that paper, or you're stressed about your job, it's going to help you perform at your job, then it does not have a negative impact on your lifespan or your health. But if you perceive that stress as something that's going to hurt you, then it will.
Interesting. Yeah, perception is key. That can change your entire outlook, literally, on life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been incredible chatting with you, especially that last piece. That was very insightful. But I would love to let our audience know where they can find you, whether it's a website or Instagram or anything like that.
So my Instagram is @skiersalko. My last name is Salko, so it's SALKO. My website is laurensalko.com. And on Facebook, it's Lauren Salko. It's pretty. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really tweet, so I don't know that you want to follow me on Twitter.
I feel you there. I made one and I've never been on it.
Well, I did make a TikTok that I really thought it was going to go viral, and it just hasn't. So feel free to also follow me on TikTok. You will join 13 other people who follow TikTok. I really thought, I was like, I'm so good. This is going to be great. And they have like 16 views on all the videos.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a flop.
The teenagers didn't pick up what you're putting down, I guess.
No. I feel like you have to post more consistently too, and I just didn't pick up on the memo. That's my dog running.
Cool. Well, then that's what it is. Everybody go find Lauren Salko across the interwebs. Got Skier Salko on Instagram, laurensalko.com, and Facebook is Lauren Salko.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. It was fantastic chatting with you again, especially after our awesome panel we had for Connected Emotion.
No problem.
We're going to keep an eye on you, and hopefully you see in the Olympics someday.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. And everybody else, thank you so much for listening to Pardon My Pancreas. We will see you guys next time.